So moral responsibility, sticky situations. Let's talk a bit about banks' reputations now then. Let's discuss this in a bit of detail with two people who really specialise in this field. Now, Gary Davies is a professor specialising in corporate reputation at Manchester's Business School, and Jonathan Hemus, director of Insignia, who looks at the reputation management and crisis communications. Well, should we start off by talking about the damage done to the Royal Bank of Scotland's reputation? Let's talk about them first. Move on to Barclays in a minute. Customers, of course, not being able to access their own money. That is, of course, a fairly fundamental failing of the business's core function. If we start with you, Professor Davies, how much is that going to have damaged RBS's reputation and their relationship with their customers?
Two facts to bear in mind. One, from the customer's point of view, it's still very difficult to move your bank account from one bank to another. So one-off, a problem. If Royal Bank of Scotland recover well, I don't think it will have any long-term damage to the reputation. And there's quite a history here when an organisation comes clean when they've done wrong, apologises, sorts it out, makes redress as necessary, then any reputation damage is relatively short term. But in the context of everything else that's going on in banking, those rules might no longer hold.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? I mean, we'll move on to Barclays in a minute, but is there a difference here in that RBS's problems were based on a mistake? There was a mistake made, a technical mistake, even human error, but it was based on a mistake, not on a deceit. Does this alter their route, really, to regaining customer trust? Jonathan Hemus?
I think there is a difference here. You're absolutely right. A technical issue is incredibly damaging, particularly when it went on so long, but a cultural failing and one that is maybe based on deceit or inappropriate behaviour is far more damaging because it goes right to the core of the organisation. Clearly, it was a very unhelpful time for NatWest to be having a technical problem. But yes, I would agree. The fact that it was a technical issue makes it less damaging than the more cultural issue that we saw later in the week.
Well, let's talk of this kind of cultural issue, as you've put it. I mean, how much currency does trust have in the business world as a whole, first of all?
Trust, I would say, is absolutely crucial these days. There was a piece of research which came out from an organisation called Edelman recently that showed between 2011 and 2012, trust in chief executives had fallen from 50% of people trusting chief executives to only 38% trusting chief executives, which puts them just above politicians. Organisations which have trust, which have earned trust, organisations which have strong relationships will succeed. Those that don't are going to struggle, and clearly the banking sector is grappling with that right now.
I mean, this issue of trust and this kind of bad reputation and bad image, have there, Gary Davies, been any instances where industries have had this reputation and actually turned themselves around?
Yes, well, I was chatting to your researcher yesterday. The only industry I could think of that's shown a turnaround of the nature that is probably required there of banking is food retailing. I was reminded of a poem by a guy called G.K. Chesterton. God made the wicked grocer for a mystery and sign that men might shun the awful shops and go to inns to dine. So, sorry for the lengthy quote, but the word wicked is interesting. And the fact that poem was only published in 1917. By the 1990s, food retailing, on the sort of research that Jonathan's been referring to, were way up amongst the organisations that we trusted the most. But it's taken an awful long time.
This is the thing. It's a long time, isn't it?
And it did take a couple of things. One was change in legislation and another was competition. The big sea change didn't come until the 1970s with the Sale of Goods Act, which replaced the original idea of caveat emptor, which meant that once you left the shop, tough, and whatever you bought, that was your problem, with what we have today. And secondly, the idea of competition, people coming into the market on a more moralistic platform. And two companies come to mind from that era. One, of course, is the cooperative movement, and another is Sainsbury's. Another might be Waitrose, part of John Lewis Partnership, who had the courage to come out into the market and say, we are trading on an ethical platform. And the problem with for any of us thinking of switching our bank accounts is, are we going from the frying pan to the fire? Is there anything fundamentally different about one bank compared to another?
This is what's interesting, isn't it? Because is actually this crisis creating a business opportunity? Maybe some new banks will spring up, or other banks like, financial institutions like Virgin Money will go, this is an opportunity for us now to be the new kids on the block with a kind of clean slate and move things forward that way.
Imagine what would happen if, after listening to this broadcast, 1,000 Barclays customers, such as myself, shifted their bank account. And the following day, the same thing happened. And the following day, the same thing happened. How long would it be before we would see definite movement within Barclays? As I say, the problem is, who on earth do I go and bank with now?
Jonathan Hemus, around the world, does banking have the same reputation it does have in this country? Are there any instances where you could go, well, in that country, actually, bankers are seen as very respected?
I mean, that's not something that I can really talk to. Certainly, it seems to be a global issue, but there may be individual markets where that's different. But I do agree that this is an opportunity for someone to build a strong reputation. If you look at the train industry, that was one that was beset with reputational problems 10 years ago. Richard Branson came in, launched Virgin Trains, and has created a very strong brand there. And as you described, there's an opportunity, I think, for someone to say, we are different to all of the other banks and make commercial advantage out of that.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Jonathan Hemus and Gary Davis.
And Tony Bonsignori from 5 Live Business, still sitting here. It's